Breaking right now, some just incredible new poll numbers. This is like hot off the presses, guys. In fact, we just had to go and change all our graphics, okay? So sorry for the delay, but this just came out. I'm going to get to it in just a second. Plus, we've got some breaking news on Judge Merchan. You know, Juan Merchan in New York City and that so-called hush money trial. You know, Donald Trump was supposed to be sentenced next week. And the judge has just postponed the sentencing of Donald Trump until, what do you know, after the election. Now, why would that be? There is some concern about election interference. In other words, if he sentenced him, would that be interfering with the election? I mean, like, I'm just going to go back to, is it not interfering with the election? That you went after him for everything imaginable? Like in the first place? Was that not kind of a big deal? I think it was. I don't think they necessarily cared because the whole idea was that they had to stop this guy in his tracks. They did not want Donald Trump running for the office of the presidency. And yet here he is running. And so they threw everything they possibly could at him. I mean, to think that they were even hitting him with nearly a $500 million in a fine. Remember that good old bond that he had to come up with? I mean, Letitia James, wow. Because he and she have a difference of opinion about what the value of Mar-a-Lago actually was. And then there's the Stormy Daniels thing, and that's what Judge Merchan has to do with. And so now, again, we're just learning this afternoon that the judge has postponed the sentencing of Donald Trump until after the election. That's probably a wise move. You know, there was some talk, oh, he might be going to Rikers. And I'm like, okay, if that happens, you want to sort of wake the sleeping beast, so to speak. Can you imagine how angry people would have been? Wow. Anyway, a lot going on at this moment in time. I want to get straight to the polls. Breaking news, everyone. Nate Silver has just come out with a brand new prediction poll. And this is an interesting one to watch. By the way, subscribe, share, like, comment, all that good stuff. I want to pull this up. As I said, we were just remaking them. Here, let me show you the old one. This is the old one, guys. This is what I thought we were going to be talking about today. But what do you know? So the old one, mind you, was pretty darn good. If you look at this just came out yesterday. This is September 5th, 60.1 to Harris's 39.7. But guess what? Lo and behold, it's like every single day. You want to talk momentum? I'll tell you, the momentum is with Donald Trump at this moment in time. Let's go to the newest poll that just came out, the prediction model, I should say, because it takes into effect various things, and we'll go through it. But here we have this that came out. We're looking at, oh my gosh, this is incredible. 61.5% to 38.3. Wow. So Nate has a really interesting model. I like his model, guys, because Nate is looking at it almost like a financial analyst would, right? He's not just saying, okay, I'm going to look at the polls and I'm going to take the aggregate of the polls and we can go through those because I have those numbers for you too. And it's super, super tight in those. But he's saying, let me advance this a little bit. Let me try and actually take in other things into consideration. And the reason why she apparently keeps moving up in this prediction poll is because, one, she didn't get any bounce out of the whole DNC event. Typically, you'd have a candidate who would get a little bit of a bounce. She didn't get that. I think because, America just hasn't seen enough of her, doesn't really understand her, doesn't really believe that she can do anything different than she did with Joe Biden. But the other reason is because of her lack of success thus far in Pennsylvania. She really has not been able to win any polls in Pennsylvania. So here we are. We're looking at Nate's new model. Look at that divergence. Oh my gosh. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, I thank you for that. And I would love it if you would go and give me 5 stars and a very nice review. Same thing over on Spotify. If you're listening, that's so wonderful. If you're watching live on the YouTube channel, that's awesome. It's great to have you here. Make sure you subscribe. And I'm blown away by this graphic. I mention that again, just for the audio listeners only, because it's like a giant V now. It's like right back to where we were before Biden went down in flames. Before they knocked off Biden, Harris looked like she had no chance in HELL of ever winning this thing. And she's nearly back to that point. Again, Trump at 65.1%, Kamala Harris 38.3%. So she's praying for a miracle, right? I think Kamala Harris is suddenly getting kind of religious, shall we say. Let's dig a little deeper into these poll numbers because I want to show you what's going on in these battleground states. Remember, Nate is looking at something a little bit different, right? He's got other things that he's factoring in. Why? Because it's so darn hard to get a read on people, especially when it comes to Donald Trump. Because a lot of people don't really want to say, hey, yeah, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. They just feel uncomfortable about it. The media has ensured that they will feel uncomfortable about it. And so consequently, you really can't get the kind of read that you need. So Nate, in an interest of trying to be right here, is really trying to come up with a new way to model this stuff. But let's take a look at the battleground states. So for example, if we look at these are the real clear polling averages. You see it's pretty darn tight, right? So he's ahead in Arizona. He's ahead in North Carolina. They look to be tied in Pennsylvania. I've seen a lot of polls showing that he's actually moving ahead in Pennsylvania. But again, this is amazing. I mean, it's amazing when you consider how heavily the media has promoted her. I mean, how much have we heard about how wonderful she is and how great and this will be so cool? Well, Americans, I think they're just wise to it. I think that they're like, well, wait a second. You know, my groceries were a lot cheaper under Donald Trump. My gas prices were a whole lot cheaper under Donald Trump. I was able to kind of make more money, right? Have more disposable income. Under Donald Trump, I felt more secure in my foundation, in my future. And by the way, we weren't dealing with the border things. I mean, that's an abomination, frankly. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people that have come into this country and are continuing to come into this country undocumented. So consequently, this is why you're seeing this massive reaction. Now, I haven't seen the very latest on the betting markets, so this is as of this morning. You still saw that the betting markets were putting their money on Donald Trump. A Donald Trump win, 50.8 overall to 47.7. Poly market and B-win kind of out in front there, showing that they really think Donald Trump is in the lead. I mean, Betfair as well. Look at that 5-point spread, you guys. I mean, Predict It has been the only one to really suggest that Kamala Harris is in the lead. There are a lot of people that like Polymarket better because they think it's a more accurate representation. It has newer technology, etc. But this is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. I say it's amazing because consider the fanfare, consider the red carpet treatment. I mean, you got George Clooney on board, right? Like, how is she possibly going to lose this? When all these fancy schmancy people are like, we love her, we love her, we love her. And you've got MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post all in your corner, willing to take arrows for you, right? And yet this is all she's got to show for it? Really? Again, the new number, 61.5%, Nate Silver predicting the chance of Donald Trump winning. It is amazing, absolutely amazing in light of how she has been treated. But I'll tell you, it's because Americans are wise to it, right? I think they're really, really wise to it. And they're looking for more from her, which is why Kamala Harris needs to pull a rabbit out of the hat or something fantastic like that when it comes, ladies and gentlemen, to this debate. So it's happening on Tuesday. It's on ABC. We know that the president of ABC News, owned by Disney, is very good friends with Kamala Harris. In fact, Kamala wouldn't be married to Dougie Boy if it weren't for Dana over at ABC News. So great, all right? She's got friends in high places. But is she going to be able to succeed in this debate? I mean, the bottom line is she does not come across as somebody who's really grounded in policy. She wanted to have her notes there. I guess, going back to the courtroom, I got my notes. I know I can say this. I know I can say that. Instead of having committed it to memory, because I don't think she commits these things to memory. She's not immersed in it the way some of us are. So she can't do that. She wanted her notes. She's not going to get her notes. So now it's this memorization game. I'm telling you, the same people are involved in this that were involved with Joe Biden. God bless her. God help her. It's going to be a disaster. She's not even talking to people right now. Reporters are like, hey, Kamala, how's the debate prep going? She won't even answer them. This time she didn't pretend she was on a phone call. This time she just walked right on by like she can't even hear. I mean, come on. Can't you just be nice and say, hey, great, thumbs up. It's going great. Unbelievable.
How's debate prep? Madam Vice President, how is debate prep going?
So she makes it up the stairs just fine. She's got good posture, all that. But like, come on, just throw him a bone. Say, hey, it's great. How are you doing? Hope you have a great weekend. Something. I think she's really rattled. I think she's completely freaked out. I mean, first of all, she's going to have to stand. She can't sit. And the microphones are going to be muted, which means she will actually have to talk for a full 2 minutes. And she will have to try and make sense. And she can't use those little crutches that she uses, those little expressions that she's got, that she loves to go back to.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
Okay, so that's not going to fly. She can't say that. She can't use some, well, she probably will try. She'll try and say, oh, I'm turning a new page. We've heard that one before. I got a few of those coming up. She keeps saying it over and over again. But here's the deal. The microphones will be muted. So she'll have her turn and he'll have his turn. And her side is not very happy about that. Ian Sams, her campaign advisor on MSNBC.
I think you mentioned the fact that the Trump campaign insisted on having the microphones muted in the debate on Tuesday night. I think that you can see that that's clearly a concentrated effort by President Trump to create a parameter to let him be more disciplined and more careful in his approach. I think people might be underestimating his ability in the debate, given the structure and format of those muted microphones. He lies so much that it's hard to fact check him in real time, whether you're a moderator.
Really? You know what? Because I find that Kamala Harris lies so much that you can barely keep up with her fact checks in real time, right? After all, she tried to tell us that she reduced inflation, and Dana Bash just let it go. I mean, 16 minutes that we got of Kamala Harris with Timmy. I mean, she couldn't even do it on her own. Think about that. There's a reason for that, guys, because she can't. She can't sit down for an interview on her own, and now she's trying to cram for this darn debate where she's not going to have the crutch of being interrupted by one Donald Trump. I mean, this is going to be something to see. Kamala Harris trying to say, well, I'm this, that, and the other. Just look at my record. No, if we look at your record, lady, we know exactly what we're getting.
Vice President Harris, still people believe that he can handle the economy better. What would you say to them that are listening to you right now? How could you change their minds that you could do it and even better?
Well, you should look at what I've accomplished thus far.
Okay, shall we? I mean, just for fun, that was a radio interview that she did this morning. You see, they're trying to prep her. So they have her doing these like softy radio interviews. She doesn't have to be on camera. She can have her notes in front of her all she wants. In fact, one of them, you can actually hear her turning the page. But that's the problem here. She just wants to say, look at my record. Well, we know her record. Take a look at that. Donald Trump is out putting this graphic out because there's her record. Mortgage rate's 2.77%. Not that the president has a lot to do with that, but under Kamala, 7.75%. Then we had personal savings rate. Well, that was a little bit stimmy related, but she put some stimmy in there too, and it's still down 73% when it comes to Kamala Harris. Credit card delinquencies. Hey, they were down 11%. Not bad, right? Under Trump, up 50% under Kamala Harris. And then real weekly wages. This is what really hurts. People are making less money when adjusted for inflation under Kamala Harris than they were under Donald Trump, 8.2% to negative 3.9%. So Kamala, she's got kind of a bad record. When she says, take a look at my record, hey, we'll take that all day long, right? You'll take a look at that record and you're going to see that. Not to mention, I mean, grocery prices, gas prices, electricity prices, all of this stuff is really, really hard. For her to say, hey, you know, it's Trump's fault, it's not gonna fly. I mean, he's got the facts on his side economically.
New way forward and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're supposed to buy that. It's not her fault, not her fault. Trump is the problem. And we're going to turn the page. We're going to turn the page. Remember that, guys. Turn the page. How much you want to bet you're going to hear that again and again and again? She used it there with Dana Bash in the CNN interview. And guess what? She used it again this morning in Phoenix on the radio. And you can literally hear her turning the page because she's got her notes in front of her. And the reporter asks this question. She doesn't like it. Listen.
This time to address Hispanic Americans who may be on the fence about which way to vote on November 5th.
Listen, I think that it's time to move forward and to chart a new way forward. And we need to turn the page on this Trump era. You know, this person who has talked about...
You know, vocal fry aside... That's a little pet peeve of mine. And if any of you know, I have a background in classical music, specifically in opera as a singer. So when people talk like this and they fry their voice, it's really, really annoying to me. So I can't imagine having to listen to 4 years of Kamala Harris doing that. But anyway, you can hear her there in the interview. She's a little too relaxed. She's got her notes in front of her. She's got the vocal fry going. She likes to say, you know. Again, another crutch. And I don't think she's prepared. So this is going to be a gigantic flop. I mean, unless, like I said, she's able to pull a few rabbits out of that hat, I think it's going to be what seals the deal. And you're going to see a whole new thing when you look at these prediction models. Wow, what's going to happen then? I mean, Donald Trump has a real shot of winning this debate on Tuesday. Because all he has to do is say, hey, Kamala, look at your record. It's lousy, and he'll rattle it off. You know he will. He's got all those numbers committed to memory. He'll rattle off her record, and then maybe he'll actually point to her inconsistencies.
My values have not changed.
Reduce red meat specifically.
Yes. The Boston Marathon bomber. They should be able to vote.
I think we should have that conversation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes, and I'm in favor of banning fracking. I am prepared to pass a Green New Deal.
I support a mandatory buyback program. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. The idea that more police equals more safety, that's just wrong.
Policing, as we know, goes all the way back to slave patrols and that idea.
Yeah, you are absolutely right.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
We need to take a look at these budgets.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should.
70 to 80% tax rate.
I think that's fantastic.
Chipping now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
How dare we speak Merry Christmas?
And yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need...
She's radical, all right. So that's all he has to do. He has to say, hey, Kamala, you were this and then you were that. By the way, why do you keep copying me? You like my no tax on tips. And you seem to like that wall all of a sudden. I mean, weren't you border czar for 3.5 years? Thank you very much. And how are you going to fix inflation? You're going to turn the page, lady, except that you are the page. You've been there for 3.5 years, and we have only this to show for it. So I don't know how she wiggles her way out of this. I really don't. I mean, David Muir, who's the moderator, very nice guy. I'm sure he's trying to be fair, but he has his biases, like everybody at ABC News. And so it'll be very interesting to see how he's able to kind of negotiate this as she just tries to double down on personal attacks. I guarantee you she will, and has no actual solutions for problems like inflation, big problems like inflation, right? Groceries up 22%, since Donald Trump left office. Eggs up 47%, car insurance up 54%. Maybe she'll blame, she'll blame those food companies. But hey, and by the way, that doesn't fly because it's actually not the food companies. Rob and I over at 76 Research, we have looked at these margins, and these companies are under tremendous pressure because the cost of fuel's gone up, the cost of getting goods from point A to point B has gone up, the cost of wages has gone up, everything's gone up, right? So consequently, yes, they are passing those costs on to their customers. I realize it's politically expedient to say, it's just those big bad companies, let's blame them. But in actuality, that's not true. And even if it were, okay, let's go with the Kamala logic for a second. Even if it were, hey lady, that's on you. You've been there for 3.5 years. If you're this fancy schmancy prosecutor, why'd you do anything about it? You didn't do squat about it, right? Because it's actually your policies, including the Inflation Reduction Act, that led to these massive problems in the first place. Plain and simple. So this is all Donald Trump has to do. He just has to remind her of what can be, what should be, or what was, right? That past. People want to go back to that past. They're like, I was safer, I had more money, there were better opportunities. So Kamala's in a bad spot. Listen, you don't have to be in a bad spot. One of the things I want to remember for all of you to tell you about is 76 Research. It's the company I created and I'm so super proud of because we're really dedicated to trying to help you start to put yourself first, put your savings first and start to invest, right? You got a market that's way off today. You got a lousy jobs report. We're going to talk about all that. I'm actually also going to be over on 76 Research in a little bit at 76 Research on the YouTube channel if you want to watch us there live. I know Peace of Mind always comes over. It's good to see him. And I know that Peace of Mind, you are able to actually get a lot of questions in because the channel's super small. So that's great. But the most important thing I want to tell you about as far as 76 goes is that we have the 76 report. It's just $1 a month with code word dollar for the first 2 months, then it goes to $9.95. But this is going to be the best $9.95 I think you've ever spent because there's a lot of ideas there. And we also walk you through things when you're dealing with the sell-off like you are today. I actually see it as an opportunity as a long-term investor. I personally went back into the market today because I like days and weeks where things are lower because those are your opportunities. You see a very different spin, shall we say, in the financial media, and it's when it's red on the screen, you're just going to put bears on, and that's what they ride all day long. I've been there, done that, right? I've seen that in real time, and I just think it's very important to be able to kind of see through to the end game, right? And to kind of get the noise out of the picture, if you would. So this is what we're doing there at 76 Research. We're fully independent. We don't have any conflicts. We're not running your money. We're not managing your money. We're just giving you our view and our opinion on the opportunities right now. And we have 3 different portfolios. You can subscribe to the Founders Club and get all of them. You're going to get 10 to 15 names in each one, and we update you regularly on those. But these are stocks that we think on a personal level, and we have a lot of data to go along with it because, Rob is a stock guru and has been doing this for 20 years and run billions of dollars. And so we are really committed to trying to make sure we have an accurate representation of what we think is the opportunity for the future. So again, coming up at 76 Research on the YouTube channel, please go and check that out as well. I will be there live later on. But you consider all this inflation and you consider that Donald Trump actually has facts on his side. I mean, what does Kamala Harris have? Oh, he's just a mean guy. We don't really like him. I think that's kind of played out already a little too much, if you would, right? I think people are over that. And I'm not so sure that she's going to be able to work that when people are dealing with the realities of, yet again, more bad news today on the jobs front. And they had this clown of an economic advisor. He actually runs the National Economic Council there in the Oval Office, who's not even an economist, actually, by background. He's a music major and then got a degree in social work. Jared Bernstein, he went on MSNBC, and I just continue, he, for whatever reason, just constantly is making a fool of himself and then comes back for more. So today, Andrea Mitchell, who, by the way, his husband ran the Federal Reserve, we're talking about Alan Greenspan, she kind of gave him an out. She tried to let him blame the Fed a little bit. Did Jerome Powell leave rates too high, too long? He could have gone there. He didn't because, it's Jared. And, again, he embarrassed himself because he's trying to say that 142,000 jobs being added to the economy is just fine. We'll take it. No, thank you.
Is this cooling off worrying? Is it possible that the Fed went too long in keeping rates high?
Look, I think 142,000 jobs that we got in August, that's demonstrably strong enough to keep the unemployment rate from going up. And in fact, the unemployment rate ticked down from 4.3 to 4.2. No question, that's a slower pace of job gains than we saw, but we were sustaining a breakneck pace that we knew was going to slow down. I think the operative question here, Andrea, is are we generating enough jobs to give people ample opportunities in the labor market to keep the unemployment rate from going up and to especially maintain those solid wage gains that you just mentioned. With wages up about 4% on a year-over-year basis, that's well ahead of inflation, which was last seen at below 3%. So real wage gains, jobs, wages up, unemployment, inflation down. That is the direction of travel, and it's the right one.
Well, that's spin for you, right? 142,000 jobs, let me tell you, that's not great. And then if you look at the revisions from June and July, that's certainly not great. And he's trying to say, we were doing fine because, we were so well padded going into this. Well, you weren't really, because it turns out you totally overestimated by like 800 some odd thousand the number of jobs created in the last year. So, Jared, this is not a good track record. And Andrea should have held your feet to the fire on that because she knows better. I mean, assuming she talks about the economy with hubby at home. Alan, he knows better, right? And she gave him the out. She was like, hey, isn't it the Fed's fault? And he's like, no, we're doing fine. This is just fine. I'm telling you, it's not fine. And that is why you're seeing the polls shift the way they're shifting. This is why if any of the Democrats would wake up, they need a plan. And the plan is not to just say, I'm going to hand you this and I'm going to hand you this. First of all, people don't trust it. Just look at what happened on student loans. She promised she was going to forgive everybody's student loans. That didn't go over so well. Not with the Supreme Court. I guess she has to actually stack the court, which she intends to do, right? If she were to win the Senate and the House, whole other scary scenario. But that would be something she would have to do if she was ever going to get those loans forgiven, because it's not happening. It's not actually constitutional what she's trying to do. So people don't believe her. They don't have confidence in her economic plan. And now you get a situation as she goes into this debate of a lousy jobs report. You spin that however you want, Jared. Kamala, I'll be interested to hear your spin. You got a market that's again lower. It's been like the toughest week for the S&P in quite some time. And so this is kind of a layup. It's a layup for Donald Trump. Speaking of the S&P, by the way, this is 76. I'll just show you real quick our income builder portfolio. Top 5 holdings. You can see how much they were up in the last 3 months. Our quarter ending 8/29/24. Median stock return in the portfolio is 15% versus the S&P at 6%. So again, if you get a chance, go over to 76 Research, look at those model portfolios. Use the code word dollar, right? 76research.com. Get the 76 report for $1 a month to start. And, start looking at this stuff, you guys, because the problem we have is that the Fed's going to come in and they're going to cut rates. People are predicting between 25 and 50 basis points, quarter point to a half a point cut. I expect that they'll be somewhat reticent to do the full half point because that might really freak out markets, right? People will be like, oh my gosh, it's worse than we thought. So I imagine they'll try and come forward with the 25 basis points or a quarter point cut to rates. And, Democrats are going to be really mad. They're going to say, hey, Jerome, you should have done this earlier. Look at the state we're in now. But what you need to care about as an investor, and Rob and I will talk about this a little bit on 76 Research coming up, what you need to care about is what does that mean for asset prices? It could have an inflationary effect, right? That's always a worry. It's one of the reasons why we like gold in these kinds of environments. But it also could have an inflationary effect on asset prices, on equity prices, right, in the stock market. And this is why you see over time, look, those with capital that are investing tend to be rewarded at an exponential rate compared to everyday workers that are out there committing the labor, right? You get the factory workers versus the shareholders in the factory. And so this is one way, if you can somehow just try and ease off a little bit, and they have all these free programs nowadays. You go to your bank and they've got free trades that you can do. So it doesn't cost a lot. Just try and even automate it, right? Like say, I'm going to put $10 in every single Friday into the S&P, or $100, whatever you can afford. I think it's important in this kind of environment for sure. When we look at these job numbers, one other thing I want you to keep in mind here, guys, these job numbers, 142,000 that Jared Bernstein and the administration thinks is so fantastic, you got to keep it in perspective, right? I told you 142,000. It's not going to cut it. Not when you need 350,000. Just to keep pace with population growth. And that was like 10 years ago, okay? Now we got population growth that's coming in illegally. I want to show you some video that's making the rounds on Twitter. Somebody posted this. I'm not familiar with the person that posted this, but I've seen a lot of videos that are quite similar, including out of Fox News. And it's the same old story, right? You see these people at the border, and unfortunately, they're coming from all over the world, and they're coming up through the Mexican-U.S. border because it's the easiest way to slip into the country undetected. Here we go.
Where are you from? India. Where are you going? Thank you. You?
India.
Where are you going?
Oregon.
Thank you. You?
India.
Where are you going?
New York.
Thank you.
India.
Where are you going? Thank you.
India.
Where are you going?
California.
Thank you. You?
India. California.
Thank you. You?
America.
Thank you. Where are you going?
California.
You? Where are you going?
Indianapolis.
Okay, thank you. Where are you going? Where are you going?
So you get the picture, right? You get the idea. A lot of foreign people coming from all over, coming up through the border. And it's concerning. It's very, very concerning. When you think about 142,000 jobs being added to the economy and you say, okay, I need at least 3 to 350 for population growth, no one's taking into account the illegal population growth. So our friends are at Zero Hedge, really cool website, by the way, Zero Hedge. They looked at this data alongside the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and what they found was actually that the unemployment picture needs to be understood through who's actually getting the jobs. So this is for August of 2024. Again, 142,000 jobs created. The majority of those jobs there are actually going to, not the majority, I should say. The majority are still going to native-born workers. But when you look at this chart, look at how many in the green there are going to foreign-born workers. So almost half. Now, is that demographics? Like are older people just saying, okay, I'm getting out of the workforce, I'm retiring? Or is this simply the reality that, we are changing as a nation? And, I don't know as it's age as much as it is, we do have a lot of people that have come into this country, and it's gotta be dealt with in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I think even Kamala knows that, right? Which is one of the reasons why she's talking about how she's so tough on the border. Kamala, you're not tough on the border. You were border czar. You didn't do anything about it. In fact, we saw something incredibly different. Incredibly different. We saw the most number of people coming into this country, I think, that we've ever seen. And I guess this is what they want.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
Okay, so that's Chuck Schumer, Senator Chuck Schumer, and he's making his agenda really clear. It's wild. I mean, Elon Musk out today with a tweet. He's furious. I'll share it with you. He shared a headline from Town Hall, which says, and I quote, Arizona faces massive lawsuit after refusing to remove illegal aliens from voter rolls. I mean, how do you have illegal aliens on your voter rolls? I mean, isn't that like fraud? You think? And yet they don't really care. I mean, I think she's trying to put on a good face, but again, this is why this debate is going to be so incredibly challenging for Kamala Harris, because her record and Joe Biden's record are that of inflation. It's that of open borders. It's that of an increase in crime and international tensions, and consequently, people are really scared to give her another shot. Understandably. Again, what's amazing to me is that this woman is not doing better in the polls thus far. I mean, shouldn't she be taking Pennsylvania? Well, maybe she could have if she had actually gotten Josh Shapiro, but fortunately for conservatives, she's so much of an egomaniac and so worried about what people in Michigan are going to think if she were to put a guy who's Jewish, right, on the top of the ticket with it. Let's be honest. Like, what was that about? They're saying, well, she didn't want him sucking up all the oxygen in the room. He's kind of like a big presence, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's her ego. Too much ego. And then you've got the problem of, oh, well, you see, he's actually pro-Israel. And that's maybe not going to fly with all those campus protesters, right? All those people, and not to mention Ilhan Omar, Bowman, who's no more, but the rest of the squad, right? Like, think about the whole squad. Think about how important Michigan is to her. Detroit. She's worried that if she put Josh Shapiro might have actually handed her Pennsylvania. So that's the good news for conservatives. That's the good news for Donald Trump. And he's got a real shot at Pennsylvania. I mean, consider what happened to manufacturing. Even the data today, what did we see? Manufacturing jobs. That's the sector that lost out. Construction was up a little bit. Manufacturing was down. Increasingly, it's the manufacturers in America that are under fire. And Kamala Harris is the one that said she was going to go out and ban fracking and this, that, and the other. She also wants the EV mandate. Remember that one? Even though the companies don't want the EVs. I mean, actual car companies are like, no, we're out. Ford, Toyota, they're like, we're going to do the hybrids. We don't want to do EVs. So what's going to happen to her mandate? Because in like 10 years, right, we were supposed to be nothing but EVs. She said she's not really for that anymore. Well, what are you for, lady? I think you're for whatever you think is going to work for you to get elected. And you're not willing to actually double down and talk about real stuff like Donald Trump is doing. My gosh, he's talking about a sovereign wealth fund based off of tariff revenue that whether or not this works. I mean, it's super interesting. I mean, you could maybe, and Rob and I can talk about this, you could create like a sort of an infrastructure fund based off of tariffs that you're bringing in. A lot of people are like, oh, but you already have treasuries. But what if you earmarked that money differently and did some private partnerships with corporate America so that maybe they were running the roads and the airports? This is the innovative stuff that he's actually talking about that I don't think she even fundamentally grasps or understands. Here he is talking about tariffs and inflation and making a really good point while speaking at the Economic Club of New York.
Smart tariffs will not create inflation. They will combat inflation. I had almost no inflation, and I had the highest tariffs that anyone's seen, and they were going a lot higher. Foreign nations will pay us hundreds of billions of dollars, reducing the deficit and driving inflation down. It'll largely reduce our deficit. In my first term, we imposed historic tariffs with no effect on consumer prices or inflation. The anti-tariff people, many of them, I believe, honestly work for these other countries in some form, get tremendous amounts of lobbying money and other money because it doesn't make sense what they're saying. But we had no inflation and we had protection, and I saved so many industries. I saved the steel industry. But Biden and Harris are letting it go. They're letting it go. It's so easy to keep. A combination of fair trade, tax cuts, regulatory cuts, and energy abundance will allow us to produce more goods better and cheaper right here in the USA than we've ever done before.
Wow. Right? I mean, really, really interesting talk. And the Sovereign Wealth Fund is fascinating. And at least this is somebody who's coming to the table with ideas that actually are grounded in something, rather than a whole bunch of hocus pocus, like, I'm going to fix the middle class, right? That's her line. This is good, guys. I got to show you this one because she went on again, that radio station. I think they're trying to just test her out here. They just want to say, okay, well, like, can she do a radio interview? Like, let's warm her up before she actually goes in for the big the big shindig. And I got to play this for you because it was amazing to me. This was sort of a layup for her to talk about her policy. And she doesn't have any. I mean, we know that, right? She doesn't have any because there's nothing on her website. Here she is.
And I'm glad you mentioned the middle class because they are the heartbeat of America. And yet many believe that everyone lives off of them and they get very, very little in return. But some are skeptical about the economic plan that you have put forth, and they say that it would result in higher taxes. How would you address those fears and reassure them about your approach?
No, actually, what it is going to do is, first of all, it is putting more money in the pockets of middle-class people. And I come from a middle-class background, unlike my opponent, who had a rich daddy who helped him start his career, and then he went bankrupt multiple times. I come from a middle-class background raised by a working mother who put all of her hard work into me and my sister Maya.
And look what we got for it. Inflation, inflation, inflation. Listen, she can say that, but the question was, how are you going to fix it? Like, why should people trust you? You can't come back with, well, I'm middle class and he's not. Because the middle class actually feel like he's looking out for them. And they feel like you're not, Kamala, which was exactly what that reporter said. In other words, this is not hard stuff, but if you don't have a plan, you don't have a plan. And thus, you're going to fall flat on your face come Tuesday. It's going to be tough for her. Like, I'm not kidding. And they can blame it on the microphones. They can blame it on the fact that she doesn't have her notes. They can blame it on the fact that she had to stand instead of sit. But the truth is that Kamala Harris is not prepared for this job. And she's not skilled enough in terms of understanding the economic policies that are at stake, as well as the foreign policies, et cetera, as well as the border policy, to really be able to argue her case. So it's bad. And it's bad considering that the media has done everything it could and can. The media continues to cover for Kamala and goes after Trump and Vance with a certain kind of venom. This one was unbelievable, guys. I don't know if you saw this, but okay, so first of all, like horrible what happened down in Georgia. And, you know, these things really, I can't tell you how upsetting they are to me when I see these events like what we just saw there in Georgia. It's devastating. I mean that. It's really, really devastating. And I think parents want to have more assurance. J.D. Vance was on the campaign trail and communicated something about needing more assurance because, you know, these things are happening too much and they've become something that we've gotten a little too accustomed to seeing in the headlines and in the media. And I want to share with you how it was characterized by the Associated Press. So his comments, and I'll play you his comments, were said to have been characterized like this, like he's saying, you know, it's just a fact of life. It's just a fact of life. Like, you know, it's such a callous characterization of what he said. And by the way, the Kamala Harris team jumped all over it, issued a press release. How dare he say it's just a fact of life? Well, here is what J.D. Vance actually said.
I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door we've got to bolster security so that if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able to. Okay.
Again, it's sick stuff. It's horrible, but I'm looking at Associated Press and saying, what the heck? Well, Elon's X effectively came to the rescue here because you had Community Notes saying that's a pretty misleading headline. The quote is, I don't like that this is a fact of life. Right? No one likes this. This is one of the worst things that's ever happened to this country. And he said, I don't like that this has become effectively so commonplace, but that's not what they're actually writing. So the good news is AP had to change its headline so that it would stay out of being noted in Community Notes. But it shows you once again how much bias there is. It's really tremendous, right? They hate Donald Trump. They hate J.D. Vance. They hate even Elon Musk. But hey, Elon Musk may be coming for them with his efficiency council.
Fourth, at the suggestion of Elon Musk, who has given me his complete and total endorsement. That's nice. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. It's very, very much appreciated. I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms. We need to do it. Can't go on the way we are now. And Elon, because he's not very busy, has agreed to head that task force. Be interesting. If he has the time, that'd be a good one to do it. But he's agreed to do it.
Look, he's right. I mean, if he has the time, because I will tell you that Elon Musk is one busy guy, and I'm amazed that he tweets as much as he tweets, right? Given that, he's trying to colonize Mars, and heck, where on earth would our space program be without him? Thank you very much. Or, all these EVs that they're so excited about. The guy sort of single-handedly created that, but because he doesn't follow the union rules, I guess he's persona non grata, or more importantly, because he's not a total liberal who's going to kowtow to the likes of Obama, Biden, and Harris. He is persona non grata. Anyway, it is thanks to X that AP got called out for that, and they have changed their headline to be more reflective of reality. Good. All right, what is this? Russia 2.0? Russia? This is actually a very serious story and a very concerning story, but here's the headline, all right? I'm going to qualify it a little bit. So apparently Russia has poured $10 million into trying to somehow affect the thinking of everyday Americans by sponsoring videos from star influencers online. Now, the reason I said I'm going to qualify this a little bit is because what do you think China does? Okay. What do you think Iran does? What do you think we do? Right? Like unfortunately, this is the way of the world. Now, it's really gross that some people were willing to take this money and do this, etc. But I am going to say that this stuff unfortunately does happen, right? Go over to TikTok, and I can tell you from personal experience, the things that they'll let through on my own TikTok account. Yeah, I have one because I'm hoping it gets bought by a U.S. investor, Larry Ellison, right? Didn't Trump almost have a deal with Larry Ellison buying the U.S. assets of TikTok? Anyway, I have a TikTok account, and it's fascinating to me what they'll allow through and what they won't allow through. And I'm like, you want to bet that the CCP doesn't have something to do with this? Even consider just the sentiment that's coming that's very, very anti-Israel. You don't think that maybe Iran has a little tiny hand in that one? I do. I'm betting they do. Not that it excuses any of this. Okay, so here's the headline. They're going to start sanctioning big time Russia today, and it gets worse for individuals and influencers.
Jose, this is being described by our sources as a whole of government action designed to target Russian propaganda and disinformation aimed at interfering in the 2024 election. It is said to include sanctions by the Treasury Department, law enforcement action by the Justice Department, and one of the focuses is on RT, formerly known as Russia Today, that network of Russian government-funded English-language websites and television platforms that was flagged all the way back in 2017 by the U.S. intelligence community as a vehicle for Russian disinformation and election interference. And at that time, the Justice Department required RT to register as a foreign agent. It remains to be seen exactly what actions the U.S. will take against RT today, but this does appear to represent an escalation in the efforts to try to purge the system of Russian propaganda and disinformation. What's interesting is that, look, the U.S. has been saying all along that
I'm all for that, right? You don't need propaganda from anyone. You don't need disinformation or misinformation, although, shall we say, we've seen it on the other side. Have we not? I'm looking at you, Antony Blinken. I'm looking at you, Mike Morrell, I'm looking at all the CIA ops and spooks and hacks that put out that letter saying that Hunter Biden's laptop wasn't real. I mean, not to mention that John Brennan had to insist and say that that dossier was real, which was then disproven. Anyway, the point being that I think there's a little bit of a desire, shall I dare say, to say anybody who's conservative is vulnerable to this Russia stuff, and they might be promoting misinformation, disinformation, etc. Because again, they're fine with University of Pennsylvania having the Biden Center completely, totally funded by the Chinese. I mean, China, they're not messing around. Forget 10 million. They got way deeper pockets than that. Anyway, so $10 million was allegedly directed at a U.S. content-making company that produced videos on social media. And it is believed that this company is something called Tenet Media. Tenet Media had a bunch of personalities that apparently they did individual deals with, where allegedly they were getting this money from Russia. According to the Department of Justice, the people that were taking the money in, one of them was a well-known YouTuber named Lauren Chen. She's alleged to have known that this money was coming from Russia, and she somehow disguised it to these influencers where they were doing deals. They were paying them a lot of money, like $100,000 a video. One influencer was getting $400,000 a month. So this was some serious ka-ching, allegedly. Well, some of the influencers, you may know. I mean, I know. Benny's been on the show. Benny Johnson. He's terrific. I like his content. He's one of the people named in this. I'm going to share with you what he had to say about it. So Benny Johnson tweeting out, as this came out just yesterday, a statement on the leaked DOJ indictment today. He writes, a year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyers negotiated a standard arm's length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed by the allegations in today's indictment, which make clear that myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme. My lawyers will handle anyone who states or suggests otherwise. And then you get this one. He sent this one out today saying the FBI has notified me that I am a victim of a crime. Merrick Garland said the same in his press conference. I am the only person who has ever had editorial control over my program, period. My attorneys are engaged. We are being smart. Stay tuned. So, wow. I guess what's being alleged here is that somehow this woman who ran Tenet Media along with her husband, his last name Donovan, he's not on camera. She is Laura Chen. Let me see if I can show you a picture of her if we have one, because I don't know if you know her or not. Apparently she worked or does work for RT. We actually pulled this off of RT today. So she's like somehow still connected to them, and she's been big in sort of these conservative online circles because she does a lot. I've seen some of her videos. I like something, it's interesting stuff. She does a lot of good commentary on Hollywood, and had something where she's really critical of Hollywood and the media. If you look at RT though, apparently she's a political and social commentator that I guess works for them or contributes to them in some way, shape, or form. Born in Canada, raised in Hong Kong, came to the U.S. for university, Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science with a minor in Middle East Studies and Arabic. So she does all these cool culture videos, but apparently was somehow with her company, according to the DOJ and the indictment, like taking in money from the Russians and then disguising it and, having people make videos. Really wild. Tim Pool out with a statement. So he's another influencer saying, quote, my statement regarding allegations in the DOJ indictment, should these allegations prove true, I, as well as other personalities and commentators, were deceived and are victims. I cannot speak for anyone else at the company as to what they do or to what they are instructed. The Culture War podcast was licensed by Tenet Media. It existed well before any license agreement with Tenet, and it will continue to exist after any such agreement expires. The only change with the agreement was that the location of the live broadcast, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, he's kind of funny at the end. He said, That being said, we still do not know what is true, as these are only allegations. Fair point, right? Fair point also with Tenet Media. He said, that being said, Putin is a scumbag. Russia sucks. Well, you can read it on the screen. I won't say it. As to the journalists who wish to jump the gun and create their own narrative or lie about what's actually going on, you can kiss my Irish, you know what. All right. So, look, it's pretty, obviously concerning. I think the problem with all this is that it's absolutely fair to be critical of the Biden administration. You should be critical. Anybody who looks at how that all went down in Afghanistan, and then later we divert resources to Ukraine and to Russia, I keep saying, hey, where's the diplomacy? Like, why couldn't they actually manage Putin a little bit better? Why did it have to come to this? There were many things you could have done. Go back and read the George Kennan writings. He was the ambassador to the Soviet Union in that Cold War period, and he warned, actually going all the way back to the late 90s, early 2000s, he warned about an escalating situation such as what we're seeing today if we didn't kind of manage Russia better. And so it was mismanaged as far as I'm concerned. You should have used every trick in the book as far as tariffs and trade were concerned to influence Putin so that, it didn't come to this. But I don't think you have sophisticated enough people. And don't forget what John McCain said about Antony Blinken, our Secretary of State, that he would risk people's lives, that people would die as a result of Antony Blinken because he's not competent. I think that's fair. I think they really screwed up. I personally believe that. Now, I'm a patriot, and when you're in something, you don't like to lose. We actually don't even cover the story that much. But all of a sudden, the DOJ wants you to think that anybody maybe who doesn't see eye to eye with the Biden-Harris regime is somehow maybe at risk of something like this. I think that a lot of people were at risk for a lot of weird stuff. I can go back to that guy that they just hired again. Lucky for them. Over at CNN, unlucky for them. I mean, wow. They're like gluttons for punishment. Remember him?
About emails again. This time, emails from Joe Biden's son, Hunter. So let's take a look at how a storyline is manufactured. In this case, a loudly
manufactured. Okay, so he's taken those 51X spooks side of things.
Anti-Biden storyline, redounding to Trump's benefit. First, it helps to really view this as storytelling, not so much as news coverage, but as political entertainment, where crushing the other party is entertaining. Fox News, the beating red heart of the right-wing media machine, molds reality into a serialized TV drama. That's how Vox recently put it. Think Lost or 24. Think Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. Think Westworld or The Wire. Every day, every night, there are what appear to be new developments in this entertainment drama.
And so he's alleging that chatter about Hunter Biden's laptop was actually just part of the conspiracy, part of the misinformation. I mean, this is the same guy who started attacking Kellyanne Conway. Let's see if we have this one. Remember? Because she was trying to say, no, the dossier is not true. And he's like, but it is, it is.
To this point, we've got multiple investigations through Mr. Mueller, through congressional and Senate committees, and CNN itself has been so hot on Russia, on the dossier. CNN's been obsessed with this dossier for over a year now, and now that we know the DNC and the Clinton campaign paid the same firm for said dossier, which is completely unverified, we can't get you excited. If you look back at your whole year...
That is misinformation that you're spreading on my program,
Hold
Kellyanne,
on,
and I
a lot of it has not been verified,
Much of the
and
dossier...
Hold on.
You just said the entire dossier is unverified.
All right. You get the point. I think what I'm trying to say here, well, there's never any excuse. If she was taking money from the Russians, she should have registered as a foreign agent, okay? Because she's effectively trying to lobby for them, right? And then that's the right thing to do. I feel for any of the podcasters that got wrapped up in that and they were told something different, as they say. But if she knowingly was taking, then wouldn't you do what Kellyanne Conway just did? Didn't she just register as a foreign agent for Ukraine because she's being paid by Ukraine to promote a certain point of view. Look, I really am concerned in that I think this administration is freaking out. They're freaking out because Kamala Harris is performing so unbelievably badly. And that as they freak out, they're going to seek out new ways to try and affect the narrative. And they're frustrated, I get it, but on the margin, it shouldn't actually ultimately really matter. I mean, unless it's really big and really systemic and you've got people, I don't know, like that lady that worked for Kathy Hochul in the governor's office. Remember the deputy chief of staff that apparently was taking millions of dollars from China? That was pretty bad, right? That woman was actually in a position of power, mind you. And she's alleged to have bought a new Ferrari and a fancy home all on China. And she prevented, allegedly, Taiwanese officials from getting to know the governor and anyone in her office. I mean, that actually is really something. Now, again, I'm not okaying. Let me be very clear, right? Lauren Chen, if she did what they're alleging she did, if she knew she was taking money from Russia when we had already sanctioned, by the way, Russia, because of what's going on with Ukraine, then she did something really wrong. And what's really scary is that she and her husband are alleged to have presented these business opportunities to other people out there without telling them where the money was coming from. Rather, it was coming from two, according to the indictment, two Russian nationals. Two Russian nationals. I'm not even going to try and say these names unless you just want to get a good laugh, but Konstantin Kalashnikov and somebody else named Elena or Lena Afanasiana. That's my best attempt. I speak Spanish and Italian, a little bit of German, but Russian was never my thing. Okay, with the conspiracy to commit money laundering, it was unsealed in the Southern District of New York. Those two individuals were at large. They allegedly worked as employees for RT, Russia TV, a Russian media outlet, and they allegedly funneled $10 million into this one company in the US. Scary, wild stuff. Anyway, on a happier note, are you investing in this market? What do you think? What do you think, guys? I'm curious. I want to encourage you once again, go check out My 76 Research. Go check out the YouTube channel. We're going to be over there. Just give us 10 minutes. We'll be right over there. So go check it out on YouTube, at 76 Research. Go check it out online. You got a weekend coming up. Do something for yourself. Start investing. You can get this research, the 76 report. It's our entry-level product at $1 a month. It changes to $9.95 on the third month. But there's a lot of useful information in there for investors. And the other thing you should look at are those model portfolios. This is my view and Rob's view of what the long-term opportunities are. There's American Resilience, so that's a growth one. Ex-NVIDIA. Rob and I will talk about that coming up. By the way, the government's going after NVIDIA for antitrust stuff. Very interesting. It's also got an inflation protection portfolio, and it's got what we call an income builder portfolio. So, look, you invest at your own risk. I always caution people to make sure that you have what you need. But also, there's a certain risk associated with not being invested. So think about that as well. I will see you at 76 Research. Good to have you all here. So many people tuning. Look at what we've done, guys. I mean, this channel has just exploded. It's really been incredible. Just incredible to see. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of everything that you guys have been able to do in terms of helping me grow. Make sure, if you have not, do me the favor of subscribing and sharing this, and make sure you get the bell, because if you hit the bell, then you're going to get everything that we put out over the weekend. James, Tim, good to have you here. LTC, I mean, it's Billy, everybody. Listen, David, Lorenzo, I am so happy to see you back here again. It's like we've developed a nice little crowd. Peace of mind. I liked your tweet, by the way. You had very nice things to say about Rob, too. We'll see you over on the 76 Research channel right now. Thank you so much, guys. Give me 5. We'll be right there.